Hi, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. I'm Miles Reef. I'm here as always with my buddy Sean Cahill. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Guys, it's Monday. You know what that means. It's time for us to get into some comment reacts. We've been trying to do these for you guys pretty consistently again. We got a bunch to get into. Sean, before we start, any channel business that we want to go over?
Not really. I think, as usual, I want to say thank you to all of our subscribers who are here to, come back and do these really more community-oriented videos with us. So thank you for your interest. Thanks to our members who are giving us $4.99 a month to keep this thing going. We really appreciate you guys. If anyone's interested in that, you can see the membership information by clicking join below this video. Other than that, this week we're going to go a little back in time. We've got a lot of comments on some older videos that are accruing, which I guess is the side effect when you have a library starting to build up of past cases you've covered. So we thought maybe it would be fun this week to get out of the current events for a moment, jump back in time, and see what people have been saying about some of the cases we've covered over the previous 8 or 9 months that we've been up.
Right, that's right, Sean. I mean, what's cool, as you said, is that we are building up a library, and it's really, really nice to see, like, whenever we go into our YouTube dashboard and check out what the latest comments are, it's not just our latest upload that's getting reactions, but we're getting stuff going all the way back, which means you guys are dipping in, you're checking out some of the other stuff we've covered, and you're showing an interest in it. And that's kind of always been the goal when we built this channel. We wanted to sort of have all of these cases to stay alive, and the door's always open there if something does happen that we can go back, do more interviews, do updates. So the fact that you guys comment on stuff and boost it back in the algorithm, other people see it, people keep talking about these cases, right? And ultimately, that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. So the first thing we're going to start with, the first case we're going to start with is Ryan Shtuka. So a lot of you guys might remember that case. We did a bunch of videos on it, and we have been getting a lot of comments on it lately. So, first one is from Awakening Universe, Youniverse. Very cool name. I think about Ryan all the time. He was around my age and seemed like a kind, chill, clearly handsome young man. I think he stumbled across bad people who did not care for him the way he did. I know those friends know what happened to him. I won't ever lose hope that Ryan is found. Thanks for the comment. Look, I think there's always been question around, you know, the guys that Ryan was on that trip with and what they may or may not have seen that night, what they may or may not have known as far as like what transpired in that after hours party and who may have been there and who Ryan may have interacted with. We don't have any way of knowing. Obviously, all we know is sort of what they said to the cops. We know what Ryan's family told us. So, it's hard to really go past that. But it's obvious that a lot of people have questions around that and always have, right? I really don't know what else to say about that. I think the idea that he probably stumbled across some people that night, I'd agree with that. I don't think Ryan just disappeared into the wilderness and no sign of him has ever been found. I've never believed that. I do think that there was foul play. The question is, will anyone ever come forward and will we ever find out what actually happened to him?
Yeah, I have to say I sort of cast my lot with you on this one. As far as what the friends know or don't know, I don't really care to speculate. I think, I can understand why people have these concerns. These guys were with him all night. They haven't really spoken very much publicly about this, and it just seems hard to believe like you were with this dude and then he just vanished. Like, come on, you know something. I don't know that that's true. I mean, it may be possible that what they said is what happened. They left. They thought it was no big deal. I mean, most of the time, if you leave 5 minutes before your friend at a party, like they're not going to go missing. It's possible that they just thought he's fine. He's a grown up, it's going to be all right. And then it wasn't all right. So what I do agree with is that I have a hard time believing it was an accident. I've said that before. Respectfully, I know that Ryan's mother, at least Heather, who we interviewed, is still sort of the mind that there might not be foul play involved and that Ryan may be still in the area somewhere as yet unfound. But the amount of searching that's been done, the amount of time that's passed, to me, it's just gotten less and less likely. Who knows what about it? It's anybody's guess at this point. I am curious to see how this turns out one day. I have a feeling we're going to learn at some point what happened to Ryan Shtuka. And if I had, if this was Vegas and I had to make some sort of a bet on it, I'd bet that there's another person or persons involved in it. But who knows? I've been wrong about this kind of thing before.
Well, I hope you're right as far as us finding out.
Yeah, that part I definitely hope I'm right. All right. So this next comment is actually about Kirsten Brueggeman, going back a couple weeks. This is probably our most recent case with a comment on it. So this is from Ruru. What's up, Ruru? We always love to see you. Thank you for being a member. Ruru says, I appreciate the parents' honesty and vulnerability, and my heart goes out to them. Somebody knows what happens, and they need to come forward and give Kirsten's parents closure. Yeah, what a great comment, because I think Kirsten's parents were really almost brutally honest with us. I think Miles and I both felt that way when we interviewed them, because they were right out of the gate the first people to say, like, look, we love our daughter and we're her biggest advocates, but let's be real here. She wasn't a perfect person, and she had a good amount of problems she was dealing with at the time that she went missing, including being on probation. She had had some run-ins with the law. She had substance abuse issues. Things weren't going perfectly for her. They were maybe on the track to get better, it sounds like, but her parents were super duper honest about not only where she was at then, but just her personality in general could be kind of, you know, she was a tough customer sometimes. And we have wondered publicly, and they wonder too, whether or not that may have gotten her into trouble that night, right? Being inebriated, running across the wrong person, giving the wrong attitude, and that whole encounter not going well is very much on the menu, and they acknowledge that. So, yeah, thanks, Ruru. As usual, you are quite perceptive.
Yeah. We're gonna move to Liam Toman. Barb Dare one says, people who are at Tremblant say on Reddit the French staff were hostile to English guests. There was a guy outside fighting with English people. Another guy went missing at the same time but found. That's an interesting comment. The language thing has come up a lot. And obviously, Sean and I being in the States, it's a little difficult for us to quite understand this seeming rivalry between French Canadians and English speaking Canadians, and how that sort of plays out, because obviously the United States is an extremely diverse place with lots of people from lots of different backgrounds. Not to say that Canada isn't, but I think it's, the US just has a history of, being extremely multicultural. So like wrapping my head around these guys having a rivalry over, what kind of accent you have as you're walking out of a bar and whether or not you speak another language. It's hard to understand, but it is something that has come up multiple times, and people have messaged us about it and, asked, did he speak to them in French? Were the guys speaking French? It's come up over and over again. So I do find that very interesting. Barb, I'm wondering if you are from Canada. I'm wondering if you have personal insight into this kind of stuff. And it's I guess the staff being hostile, and you say English guests, but it's like they're not English, right? They're Canadians who speak English, but I understand that the Canadians who speak English can trace their roots back to the UK, whereas the Canadians who speak French can trace their roots back to France. So do people up there still refer to each other, kind of like, here in the States, you'll still every now and then hear Yankee, down south, or, even though this sort of we're all in the same union now, right? So I wonder if that's a sort of slang thing where it's like, we're French and you guys are English, as opposed to that's the language that we're speaking, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that some of our viewers can educate us here, because like my understanding of Quebec in general is that it's like very fiercely independent about the French identity versus the rest of Canada, which has a more English Commonwealth identity. And I wonder if that's it. It's just like you speak French here, or you at least make the attempt. And if you don't, and you come in and you're clearly just speaking English and not making the attempt at respecting it, maybe we're going to treat you a little different. I know that that's happened to a lot of people in Paris before. Uh, I went to Paris and did my best to speak really poor French, and I feel like some level of respect for giving it a shot. So I never had that problem. But it's like it's been said, and I wonder if that's sort of what Barb's talking about here. Again, if anybody's a little closer to the subject than me, who lives in, the complete other side of North America from Quebec, please let me know if I'm on the right track. Otherwise, there's always the insider outsider stuff too. I guess it's like it's as likely that this is a bar with a lot of locals and they're dealing with a lot of tourists in their town, in their bar, and there's friction there, especially then you throw in the language barrier. These are French speaking locals. We've got English speaking tourists. People are drinking. I mean, I've seen a fight with a lot less ingredients than that, right? So it's very possible that there's frequent hostility there just around all of these things kind of
Yeah.
combined.
Well, again, like you said, it's kind of like the townies versus
Yeah.
the tourists, right? It's the people who have to live there and make a living there, and it's their home versus the people who are coming into party and maybe can be perceived to be a little bit, flippant or disrespectful on some level with how they're acting within that place, right? And I think that story is old as time, and I do think that it may play a part in this story, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, to Barb's point, the that already being there, and then you throw in the English to French language barrier where there's misinterpretations and people aren't quite understanding what the other person's trying to say, plus the alcohol, like, yeah, I could see how there's a lot of fights and hostility that come out of that situation at a place like Petit Caribou. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to take
Uh,
this next one?
Sure. So this is, let me see if I can get this right here. NP Flegel or Flegel says, I think Liam was invited to an after party, and that's why he wanted his friends to come down and go with him. Perhaps there was drugs, fentanyl-laced drugs, at this place, and even though he wasn't a drug user, he might have been enticed or tricked into taking some drugs, maybe an overdose, and the people panicked or dumped him somewhere afterwards. Now, that's a fresh theory. I had not considered that. Maybe it's possible that Liam actually made it to this place he was trying to go. Everybody thinks it seems like Liam was trying to go somewhere after the bar because he went to the hotel, asked for his friend to come down, and then kept going like out into the night. Like there was a third destination there for him. So maybe it's possible that he made it there. Maybe somebody gave him something, knowingly or unknowingly, that could have killed him. And then they freaked out, got rid of him, dumped his wallet later and his phone back at the hotel because we know that the hotel, the phone was pinging basically there later and the wallet was found very close to the hotel some weeks later. So yeah, I mean, I think that is as good a guess as anything else. Once Liam walks out into the night, any number of these things could have happened to him. What do you think, Miles?
Well, there's two things, right? There's the mysterious shadow that's caught on camera that everybody, that would support, this theory that NP's got that, Liam walked off somewhere else, right? Because you see this figure, kind of going out. But the final ping coming from the hotel itself, or the parking garage in the hotel, um, makes me think that maybe not, right? But unless, like you said, someone came back, but then the phone wasn't found. So it gets a little messy, right?
It gets a little messy, and I think that's one of the big confusing things with this whole case. Every time you think you've got it figured out, there's this other thing that kind of
Yeah.
invalidates your theories. So thanks for the
I mean,
comment.
someone could have gone back with the phone and said, I'm going to let it ping here so that it confuses everybody, and then destroyed the phone there and then disappeared, and taken the remnants of it. I don't know, but it gets a little bit complex. My thinking has always been that something happened around the hotel. That person had Liam's phone. That's where that final ping comes from. But
What's interesting in so many of these cases, we always do get comments about all of them that are like maybe the person overdosed or maybe they were hit by a car, and either the
mhm.
people around for the overdose or the driver of the car panicked and covered it up. And it feels like it's always a theory, and yet so rarely does it ever seem to be what the end story is when these things do get solved. Not to say that that doesn't happen. I think people do panic. I mean, you hear about people with their friend who overdoses and they like drop them in front of a hospital and leave. That almost
Sure.
feels like more likely though than burying them in the woods and hoping nobody ever figures out what happened.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
creep show too. It's thanks for the ride, lady.
yeah,
She hits the
yeah,
guy on the road and freaks out and runs him over again to make sure he's dead and then gets out of there, right?
yeah,
But I mean that's a horror movie from the 80s or 90s. It's not,
right. Well,
the
it's just such
truth.
an it's an interesting theory because we could
Yeah.
all see people panicking and making the wrong decision, but
Yeah, and I think that happens in life, right? But again, the cell phone ping, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
speaking of cell phone pings, Linda McMinnon, P4R asks, were they able to confirm where the final ping was from? I had heard it was from a garage underground parking at the hotel. Perhaps the phone and wallet were with the same person. So yeah, exactly. That's what we're talking about. That final ping was from the parking garage at the hotel, and the wallet was found nearby, outside, but weeks later, right? So yeah, it's quite probable, I would say. I don't want to say possible. I want to say probable that they were with the same person. And then, the question has always been for me, and Sean, I know we have talked about this, about whether the wallet was dropped and it just, got covered by snow and then was, happened to be found later, or whether it was taken and then brought back to sort of like throw everybody off, or, to just, hey, this is the safest place to drop it because this is where the kid was staying, as opposed to it being found, wherever it had gone to.
Yeah, the wallet's a big mystery, as far as what it could mean. I think the most important thing that it obviously means to me is that at some point something so catastrophic happened to Liam that he was separated from his wallet, which most of us keep close to us, but Liam actually kept in a zipped pocket, which even I, who love my wallet and use it every day, don't keep it that, well secured on me. I just pocket's enough. So how did this wallet get out of a zipped pocket and away from a human being? It seems much more likely we'd find the person and not the wallet, but it's the other way around. So it just tells me that something really bad happened. In other words, I don't think Liam fell into a sinkhole or a lake because why is the wallet here, right? There must have been something that separated the two of them. And like you said, whether that was placed there later or that's actually where he lost the wallet and then he goes somewhere else. I don't know, but it doesn't spell anything good in my opinion. It does not look good. This is to me a sign of foul play.
Yeah, I think so too. Um,
Okay, so this next one is from Angela Haas 43. For sure, somebody had Liam's phone inside somewhere. It got charged. Whether at the time Liam charged, he went to someone's place for a party, etc., or someone took it from him wherever he went or was taken. It couldn't get charged without a charger. It wouldn't stay charged in the cold. The wallet was stolen from Liam at some point, whether it was during an abduction or after. He went somewhere where they maybe tried to steal from him and he put up a fight and something happened or they wanted him to do something and he didn't want to do it, etc. I believe they live somewhere in the vicinity and go to the village and to the bars, or they work in the village. They are absolutely locals, in my opinion, somewhere within a half-hour drive. Bring Liam home. Well, yeah, I mean, if your theory is correct, I'd say somewhere within a 15-minute walk because it was freezing cold that night. A half-hour drive is a pretty good distance. And this dude was on foot in the middle of the night trying to find whatever this was. But I think that you're not far off, Miles. I mean, I know I just talked a lot sort of about this, so let me toss it to you for your take because I think
yeah,
this is likely.
I think Angela's very well, I think Angela's done a great job of breaking down what you and I both believe. I think that's dead on. Look, I don't know about the circumstances of what happened, as far as, tried to steal from him, put up a fight, drugs involved. Like that's all the big question, right? Like why did this happen? I think that's the motive, and the why something bad happened is still a big question. But what you point out about the phone, about it being charged, about it having to have been inside because it wouldn't have worked, all of that, it totally tracks with the same questions that Sean and I have been asking. I think you're exactly right. And I do feel that, from the circumstantial evidence of what we know that happened that night at the bars, all of the sort of cultural stuff that's come up around this case, I think someone being local, or several someones having been local, and it being involved in this makes total sense. I don't think it was other people who were visiting for a ski weekend. I think it was people who were local to the area, and that's part of this.
Somebody in that town knows what happened, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
completely agree.
yeah,
You want to take this next one?
yeah. We got a lot of Liam comments, huh?
Hmm.
Um, at You May Find says, why? are you asking about secrets from the parents? If he had a secret, it means he would not have told anyone. I know for a fact that teens, young adults don't tell everything, even when they are close to someone. If he was cold, he would not have noticed it since he drank alcohol. Alcohol makes you feel warm even when it's cold. Maybe he was looking for drugs. Okay, let's break this down from the beginning. You may find I actually appreciate your challenging questions. And you left a couple, and I actually I dig it, and I like your cat. So why are we asking about secrets from the parents? Because they're the people that we're interviewing, and they may have uncovered stuff after Liam went missing that we didn't know about. So it was kind of like, once the kid's gone and you start looking through all of his stuff and talking to people that you may not have talked to, you might uncover a secret. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's something that Sean and I talk about all the time on this show, that oftentimes parents don't share the same information. Oftentimes kids don't share the same information with the parents that they do with their friends, which is why Sean and I always try and do a wide variety of interviews because we're trying to get the full picture. But
Mhm.
asking the parents about secrets is really about, like, what did you learn after your kid disappeared and did you uncover anything, right? It's not like, was there a secret that you knew? Because then it wouldn't have been a secret, right? So maybe it's
Yeah.
just semantics, but
Well, look, I had secrets from my parents, and then they'd come into my bedroom and look in the closets and drawers and find my secrets, and they were no longer
right,
secrets. I think that's what
right.
we were talking about. Obviously, when somebody goes missing, like Liam, the family's going to get into their laptop, they're going to talk to their friends, and maybe people that were holding secrets would be more forthcoming because someone's missing. I think
You
that's
would
all we were
certainly
keeping.
hope. That's the
Yeah.
hope, right? And I think that might be part of the problem that people are pointing to in this case, is that not everyone's telling everything that they know. I'm not saying that's the truth, but that is something that's come up over and over again. So you may find, just continuing with your comment, if he was cold, he would not have noticed it since he drank alcohol. Alcohol makes you feel warm even when it's cold. Maybe he was looking for drugs. So I guess what you're saying is that maybe he did just get taken in by the elements because he was not paying attention to his body temperature, and he got wrecked. Uh, you know, where is he then? That's the question. Like, where's anything that belonged to him besides his wallet, which is the only thing that was found? Maybe he was looking for drugs. Yeah, maybe he was connecting with someone who told them that there would be drugs somewhere, and that's why he was texting his buddy, inadvertently texting his dad and saying, "Hey, meet me downstairs." I think that's in play. I think it's very likely that some sort of, like, continuation of the good time is part of what was in play that night with Liam's disappearance.
He was looking for something. Yeah, I think that until we know what that was, it's hard to cross anything off the list. From talking to his family, it doesn't seem like Liam was a huge like drug user or anything, but also to your point, you may find sometimes people of that age do things like that and their family doesn't know about it. So, I don't want to disparage him, but he could have been looking for a lot of things, a party, a girl, possibly more substances. Something was out there that had him interested that night. The question is, what was it? Who had it? And what happened? Anyway, thank you for your comment. It's very, very thought provoking, as you can see. Let's move on here. Still about Liam. Barb1 says people on Reddit say Caribou Club was too crowded. Maybe drinks were spiked. The guy at Caribou Club stopped Liam Toman from talking to ladies at a bar. Weird. Yeah, I mean, look, it is true. This is a huge popular drinking establishment in this town, right? So it has a reputation. And when this story comes up, both in our comment section and on Reddit, locals weigh in with like, oh, that place is crazy. There's too many people. Somebody could have spiked his drink. I see English people fighting French people. Like, yeah, I get it. It's a nightclub, basically. It's crazy. And we do know that somebody in that club who was a local stopped Liam from talking to some women and how to talk with them. That was a huge part of our case breakdown, a huge part of the interview with his parents. I think everybody thinks that's weird. Whether or not that connects to what happened to Liam later on is yet to be determined. Obviously, the police looked into this, but then people also point to, well, this guy's local, the police are local. There's been a lot of allegations of corruption in that police department. Maybe there's something there. Maybe. I mean, it's not inconceivable. And like I said on the last comment, I think all of this stuff is still on the menu until it's not. Until we know what happened to Liam, it's really hard to say that Olivier, who's the gentleman on the video talking to him, is completely in the clear, right? I don't think the police have ever come out and said 100% this guy's clear. I think that what we have at this point is from what we know today, there is nothing directly linking him to Liam's disappearance because we don't know what happened to Liam. So, yes, is it suspicious? You bet. Absolutely. Miles, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's all suspicious. Absolutely. Um, but again, I think Liam had multiple interactions that night. There was several interactions at the bar. There was apparently an interaction outside the bar. There was also the interaction with the gentlemen that were by the hotel. So I think, focusing just on Olivier and his interaction with Liam inside, when we know that he was identified, he did speak to the police. I'm not saying that he didn't have anything to do with anything, but it's not the only avenue here, right?
He might have just been the guy that was unlucky enough to be on camera having an awkward conversation with Liam, and that there were more of those types of things that night that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
Yeah, exactly. So still on Liam, Lex C6B4T says, "Forgive me if I missed some details, but when he's talking outside and pointing somewhere to those two people, isn't it possible he had already lost his wallet and he's pointing in the direction of where he thinks it was? I mean, that's also why he asked his friend to come outside to help him look for it." Yeah, I think so. I think that's an interesting theory. Why didn't he say, "Yo, come outside. I can't find my wallet and I need help"? It comes into question, but that's not necessarily, doesn't mean that that's not why he was texting his friend. I think that's totally plausible. I don't know about him talking to the two people and sort of saying like, "Hey, I was down there and I lost my wallet. I want to head back there." I'm not entirely sure of that part of it, but I do think that that's a really plausible thing that like maybe he was texting his buddy like, "Hey, I need some help," as opposed to, "Hey, let's go keep partying." And no one's actually pointed that out before, which is kind of interesting.
No, it's a good point. My instinct is probably one of the less likely scenarios, but I can't disprove it. It could be exactly what was going on. When I look at that video of him talking to the two strangers who are actually off screen, the way he's talking, the timing of his point and his body language looks to me more like he's asking for directions. Like he's saying, "I'm trying to get here. Is that over this way?" It is. And then he goes exactly in the direction he was pointing rather than like, "Did you guys see a wallet around here?" Although maybe, would he be stopping strangers at that hour of the night, asking if they had seen his wallet when he had been completely in another place for the last few hours? Maybe. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's possible. I just think that for me, it doesn't seem like what's going on, but I've been surprised before.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's take a look. So now we're going to go back to the Liz Barraza case, one of our very first that we covered. Um, really, really love this family. Always happy to talk about Liz's case and keep it in the public attention anytime it comes up here. So on Liz Barraza, a viewer named 1212 Matt says, "I love your podcast. I believe that this was work related, a coworker. I'd love to know why." Yeah, I would love to know. I think one of the things for us that's always been a little bit behind the veil of mystery is Liz's work life. All we know is that Detective Ritchie and her parents both told us there was nothing there. It was extensively looked into, but they literally just couldn't find anything. Everybody liked her. She was a beloved coworker, didn't make waves. And so there wasn't much for Miles and I to sort of like dive into and latch onto. It was just like, yeah, it was great there. I don't know what to say. So if you have more, let us know in the comments. You can also email us. Our email address is at our main, like, show page. You'll see it in our description. Um, yeah, because I haven't heard anything along those lines, Miles. Have you? I mean, that's a new one for me.
No, no. It sounds like maybe there's some inside information. So, unless you're just, I mean, look, that happens, right? I mean, that's a place where you spend
Yeah.
a lot of time. People get into problems at work. I mean, that's, you got your social life, you got your personal life, you got your work life.
Hmm.
So, it's quite possible. This one's also about Liz. Holly Pino, too. Hi, Holly. Says there's a whole bunch of information provided in the detective's omissions. This is about Michael Ritchie's interview, of which we did too, hoping he gets the evidence needed to make an arresting conviction. I wholeheartedly agree, Holly. I think that Michael's a really, really good cop, and he's very, very careful with his words in his interviews with us. And it's quite obvious that, he's not giving us everything, right? And I think that's because he's got his information and he's got his suspicions and he's working on those things. And the hope is always that that final piece will fall into place and they'll be able to make the arrest, because I think quite often in these cases the officers have a pretty good idea of who did it and they're just waiting for that final piece to fall into place, which is why it's so hard for us to get cops who are on active investigations to talk, right? Because they don't want to take the risk of screwing up the investigation. The fact that we were able to get Michael Ritchie to speak to us was a bit of an anomaly, because it does feel like they're working hard on the case. So yeah, I think you're right, Holly, that is a calculated technique, and it gives me hope that he actually does have a good idea of who did it, and that they're just waiting for that final piece to fall into place.
I agree completely. Yeah, I think that I'm a big fan of like looking at things like this and seeing what didn't that person say, right? Sometimes the absence can be louder than the inclusion. And if you really watch Michael Ritchie's two interviews with us and really pay attention, there's a lot to be gained from that, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it. I think what he said is as important as what he didn't say. And you're very astute, Holly, to point it out. All right, and so this last comment is also about Liz Barraza. This is from Ask Alex 1999, which sounds like the name of like a search engine we would have been using in that year. Ask Alex says, was anything from the garage sale stolen? Great question. So let's talk about Liz Barraza's garage sale. As far as we know, no, nothing was taken except for the obvious Liz's life that night. You can see on camera the killer comes up. They talk to Liz for a couple seconds and then they ambush her and shoot her and run away. Um, One interesting thing about the garage sale that people have mentioned is the position of some of the items. Like, there's a treadmill in the driveway that some people have speculated maybe Sergio placed that there to prevent Liz from being on their own Nest camera, which was pointed straight out in that direction. So the presence of that in frame would have forced her to be out of frame, which, if this was planned on his part, would mean the killing would happen off camera, at least off their camera. It was still caught on neighbors' cameras. But that could also be chance. And we don't know for sure that Sergio is the one that put the treadmill there. And if we do, I haven't heard that. It could have very well been Liz's idea. So as far as, you know, things being stolen there, no, I don't think the motive was theft or robbery. It seemed like a very targeted killing. Yeah, I don't know. What do you make of that, Miles?
I mean, certainly nothing was stolen by the killer, because we see them immediately turn tail and and then we see the truck, going through the frame. So someone come by before the cops came and take something. I guess it's possible, but it's never been brought up. Probably would have been seen on the camera. So no, unfortunately, that would be a nice piece of evidence, but it's not. I don't think it was related to what was actually at the garage sale.
So what makes this one so mysterious is it's obviously not a robbery. Who knew about the garage sale because it was in an odd time of day in an out of the way neighborhood that no, it doesn't have like a lot of through traffic. So yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff there. I'm eager for this one to get solved, as I know we all are.
Yep.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for your comments as always. We love doing these videos. It's one of our favorite things. So keep leaving them. We love your thoughts. We love your theories. And if you support what we're doing, keep commenting. If you really like it, subscribe or even consider joining the membership, which gets you early access to all of our big flagship episodes, plus other little perks. More and more of those coming as we move along. Anything else, Miles, before we wrap it up?
No, Sean, I think you summed it up really well. We'll see you guys this Friday.
Take care.